So, hello, my name is Dobroslawa. And as you can see, the title of this talk is more of a question. So I don't feel that I have the answers, but I would like to invite you to discussion because I strongly believe that in whatever type of social movement or in any type of social activity we are in, we can always learn something from what happened in the past or what's going on in other areas. So first of all, I'm a long-term vegan and I'm a long-term animal rights activist. Actually, the last time I've been to Prague was at the CARE conference. It was an international animal rights conference organized by Czech organization called Obraz. And to make this event more meaningful, we also organized a big protest in front of Starbucks to ask them to stop using caged eggs in their restaurants. But for the last 2 years, I've been working with the Golem Foundation as part of the communication and marketing team. And the more I saw, the challenges or how the community works, how the community perceives itself versus the mainstream society, I couldn't help but notice that there are some similarities between what I knew from my previous community and what I can see here. And of course, you can ask yourself a question like, what can be more different than this cutting-edge technology that we have here, and something that is like the most basic type of human activity, which is agriculture and food production. First of all, I believe that no matter the type of the product that we want to offer, in the end, everything is about the society and what the society prefers, about the choices that people make, and it doesn't matter if it's food or very sophisticated technological products. We have to understand how people make choices, what motivates them to make our products successful. I also believe that. And I feel that sometimes this assumption is very popular in communities that are very technology focused. That sometimes people believe that if you get the technology right, it will somehow get universal adoption just because it's good and because it serves people's needs. But again, if you look at the history of agriculture, and you know something, for example, about how potatoes became popular in Europe, then you can have a potato, which is probably one of the best vegetables there are. After all, you can make it into both vodka and French fries. But still, when potatoes came to Europe, they needed long-term, very intensive marketing campaign to persuade people to actually start eating them. The biggest obstacle at that time was that potatoes weren't mentioned in the Bible. So they were devil's made. And coming back to the fundamental question, are there any similarities between the vegan movement and the web3 movement? I believe that the biggest one is that, for sure, the vegan movement knows a lot about trying to persuade people to start using a product that lacks many of the qualities that they love in food, and that might not be the best substitute of what they love, for example, meat. But we are still trying to persuade them to make this choice because we believe that there are other very strong reasons that they should make this switch. But thinking more about what I believe is similar between those two communities, I came up with this short list. So first of all, I believe that both communities are most of all based on strong values and this is what drives many projects. So you are willing to suffer and sometimes use tools that you would rather not use, just because you believe that there is some important reasoning behind it. I think both movements position themselves strongly against status quo. So there is this like bad world out there that we want to change, or if we don't want to change it, at least we don't want to actively participate in it. I believe that both movements need better technology, more user-friendly. You might not think of vegan movement as technologically driven that much, but if you have been observing what's going on in this area for the last couple of years, the biggest changes and the growth in adoption of plant-based foods comes from like high-tech startups that produced very good meat alternatives. So it's not about tofu anymore. But at the same time, I think both communities have this problem that to get more adoption, you need better technology, but also to get better technology, you need more excitement, more users, more people who are willing to put hours into it. So it's hard to answer what will actually come first, and somehow you have to solve this problem. I believe there is more similarities. If someone is interested in this topic, I'm definitely willing to discuss it. But I try to list a couple of lessons that I believe are something that at least the vegan movement have learned from the past, and we have to at least acknowledge that the vegan movement started like over 100 years ago. So mistakes have been made, but also lessons have been learned. And some of them might be controversial. I am also not sure if all of them will work here, but at least maybe they might serve as a food for thought. So first of all, what we have noticed is that even though there were tons of really exciting businesses that started introducing very cool plant-based products, both replacing dairy and meat, in the end, the biggest traction and the biggest change in users or people's behavior came from actual big companies that started producing their own things. And even though the products weren't perfect, sometimes you would easily find a cool startup that would produce something much better. I believe that the fact that people recognize the brands, that they already have had many logistical problems solved, made adoption of some products much easier when it came from the bigger brands. It's not always a good thing, but I believe that this is what happened, and this is something that can be expected here as well. On the other hand, also most plant-based food adoption does not come from purists. The fact that we have tons of vegan products nowadays in shops and supermarkets does not come from the fact that we have more and more vegans every year. It mostly comes from the fact that there is more and more people who are trying vegan foods every now and then. If you talk with any type of vegan business, everybody will admit that most of their customers are not fully plant-based. They just want to pick and choose, and they are more and more open to plant-based offer. And I think it's extremely important because if you understand that, it also influences the way you speak to the society. So we have to target the mainstream if we actually want to get any traction. For as long as the products are not perfect, you can always focus on the why. And I think it is important. And even, again, speaking of the plant-based movement, we are starting to have decent products maybe in the last 5 years. There have been people who are trying this diet for 100 years. Like I myself, I'm a vegan for almost 20 years, I think. And for most of this time, even if the products weren't that good, we were mostly motivated by the why. For many vegans, the why is the animal suffering. But at some point, we had to admit that it doesn't have to be the same why for everybody else. So sometimes focusing too much on what motivates us without listening to the users or the customers might also be a problem. Actually, now there is more and more studies that show that people who are not vegan yet are much more motivated by health or ecological, like sustainability reasons. And it was very hard for many animal protection organizations to admit. Most of the vegan movement is very much connected to the animal protection. So it was very natural for people to not only try to persuade people to become vegan, but also for animal protection or like animal cruelty reasons. So it was kind of a change of optics that sometimes you really need to also listen to the outside world and maybe change the way you create messaging and what you focus on in your campaigns to get bigger adoption. Another thing I believe is important, I think every movement, especially when it's a niche movement, easily creates its own subculture. And I will never criticize subcultures. I actually came to animal rights movement because previously I was a member of like hardcore punk community. So I understand subcultures, I love them. I know how cool it is to be in a group of people where you feel like everybody understands each other, to have this feeling that if you just see someone's badge somewhere there in the street, you already connect because you're the same crowd. But at the same time, again, there's tons of studies that most of the people are not into subcultures. They want to be like their neighbors. They don't want to be different. So again, in the end, as much as events like this are cool, and again, vegan movement also has its own veggie fests, conferences, and anything like that. It's also good to think of communication in such a way that will not only emphasize how much we are a part of this like one big thing, because it really alienates people. I believe that if someone is like a long-term member of Web3 community, it might not be that easy to notice. But for me, as someone who still feels like an outsider, it's really visible how much of the vocabulary that's being used, the images that you use are 100% subcultural, and for a lot of people it will be actually a red flag, something they will not trust, just because it looks like, yeah, they just don't want to be a part of something that feels like a counterculture. They never wanted that, and they will probably not do it today. And in most cases, if social movements grow, it's not because the subculture actually grew and took over the society. It's just because at some point people decide to really communicate with people, we start to speak like them, we have to start to look like them and try to learn their language instead of persuading them to use our own. All of the things that I have said is more like my thinking on this issue. So I will not claim that it's in any way connected with the project I'm representing here, which is Wildland and the Golem Foundation. But at the same time, when I was preparing to this talk, I thought that there are also some similarities in our thinking. So just like I believe that if we really want factory farming to be over in our generation or in the next one, we have to focus on people who might not become vegan tomorrow, we have to communicate, we have to speak about, I don't know, maybe decreasing the meat consumption, and we have to be open to people that will not want to become like ourselves, but who might want to pick and choose and become more and more open to some solutions. And in the same manner, Wildland also thinks about users and tries to create a solution that will allow user to choose any type of infrastructure they want without forcing them to only live in this like Web3 ecosystem, which I believe might also be a good approach to getting adoption. So we are not only thinking about people who are hardcore users, but also someone who might just want to dabble and try something. And yeah. So this is a short version of all my thoughts about the similarities and also differences. If you would like to know more, I'll be happy to talk. I'm here at this event both today and tomorrow. And thank you.
Okay, we have some time for some questions. Does anyone have some questions for Dobroslawa? Got a question from James in the middle.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a really good talk. A lot of good points. I like the one, like in a similar way with using solar energy in Australia. People weren't convinced that they were doing good for the planet. That's not what tipped people over. It was knowing that their neighbors were saving money. And it's, again, that social thing that makes people convert. And yeah, do you have any thoughts of what that could look like for in the Web3 space? So, you know, say for solar, maybe it was saving money. For veganism, it can be health reasons. People will reduce their meat consumption. What is it for Web3? Could it be saving money from platforms, centralized platforms? Or have you thought about, some ideas there?
This is a very good question. I know about this example. I would say I'm a huge fan of generally studying like all the other social movements. I think it's hard for me to say now what could be the, like, yeah, I absolutely agree, but maybe it will be easier actually to answer, maybe actually a person that has more knowledge of technology and who might get some insights into how, I don't know, social change works. They could come up with answers to your question much better, but I believe that it's a very important question and or discussion to be had, like how to use social proof in Web3 adoption.
Okay, we still have time for some more questions, if there are any questions. Yep, we have another one. Yep.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Julian, and I have an edge because I discussed all those things with Dobroslawa many times. So just as a follow-up question, like I have a feeling that while this is all 100% relevant, the problem is that for Web3, it is actually much harder to have that selling point. So the question is, and I would like to refer also to Jared Hope talk yesterday, who claimed that basically, that was my understanding, we need to build like a parallel universe in a way. So this will be, which means I think that it will be hard to go mainstream. So what are your thoughts around that? Like, is it possible to remain like a hardcore at the center and build like a parallel universe and still interface somehow to the like a mainstream, to just, if not go mainstream yourself, then try to drag as many people from mainstream to yourself, if you understand what I mean. Yeah,
I understand. I believe that there are challenges here that other social movements definitely did not have, but at the same time, also from all the knowledge I have, for example, about like how animal rights worked, and also knowing from actually research of my husband who studied how anti-slavery movement looked like. I believe that this approach of just creating a niche and trying to build a separate universe and dragging people to it, I don't think it ever worked. So if this will be our only plan, I would rather start thinking about plan B, because there is no precedent, or not a precedent that I am aware of. Or maybe we're just doomed here, and that's like.
Okay, then. I think I've been given the time signal. It's time to wrap up. Thank you so much, Dobroslawa.
Thank you.